He writes a book and I read it. Jeff Pearlman's got 6 New York Times bestsellers. But to me, I see at least 9 here. You know, the one I haven't read is Love Me, Hate Me, Barry Bonds, The Making of an Anti-Hero. Are you proud of that book?
Yeah.
Okay, give me that one.
Sure. I only have 1 copy at home, literally. So you may have to order it for a nickel on eBay. Have you read the Clemens book? Because nobody's read the Clemens book.
You didn't like it?
It's my least favorite of the books.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Winning Time is based on your book. Correct. I just finished it. I read it on the plane, flight over, front and back, 3-ring circus, Kobe, Shaq, Phil, and the crazy years of the Laker dynasty. It almost, you almost read it during times, and I'm like, is this fiction? This kid, all this stuff. So what I talked about today in the Lakers coaching search, this is the one organization in Los Angeles that's always been political. Mm-hmm. When you were doing that book, were you taken back by some of the stories in politicking?
I think times have changed a little bit. That's a thing. Like the thing I see now that kind of hurts me about the Lakers, because I actually I've come to really love the Lakers.
You've written 2 great books on them.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it was really a family-run organization.
Yeah.
And that comes across, obviously, in the show.
Mom and pop, yeah.
It really was a mom and pop organization. And when they were going in for a coach, as an example, like when they hired Mike Dunleavy, as an example, after Pat Riley, they ended up hiring Mike Dunleavy. And Jerry West was all in on Dunleavy. And he did his research on Dunleavy. And he just knew, this is the guy I want. I am going to target this guy, Mike Dunleavy, because he has something special about him. And I know it. And he would go up the ladder and, all right, Dr. Buss, this is a guy we should get. Okay, I trust you. This is who we should get. And it was a very organized and meticulous approach to hiring a coach. And nowadays, and I know this is the nature of sports in a way, is it Klutch? Is it LeBron? Is it Pelinka? Is it Jeannie? Is it Kurt? Is it Phil Jackson? Yeah. And it just feels disheveled, like very, very disheveled. And I also think, I know you kind of feel this way, like the Laker job is a star power job. The Laker coaching job is a star power job. I know that sounds stupid to some people, just hire the best coach, blah, blah, blah. But it is a star job, and it's more than just about basketball.
That's right.
It's about this thing, this Laker thing. And when I hear the names they're going after, I know you're a Doc fan. I'm not a huge Doc fan, but I get the idea of that.
Yeah.
He's a name, he's a brand, it's something. It's just it all feels very underwhelming.
Yeah. What do you make of the reaction? I just finished Winning Time. I do like the book more than I do the show, but that's because the book is not embellished.
Sure.
But what do you make of Jerry West's reaction?
I find Jerry West to be one of the more lovable characters in the show.
So that's what we said.
Yeah, I really do.
Flawed, vulnerable, but so deeply earnest and caring about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I also saw an interview, or I heard an interview recently where he actually said he hadn't watched the show. And if that's true, that's a little confusing that you're very angry about a show. And it reminds me when I used to cover baseball and some ball player would be really pissed off at a reporter and he'd be like, I want to talk to so-and-so, Joel Sherman. And Joel Sherman would come in and he'd say, why'd you write that about me? And Joel would say, what are you talking about? And he goes, I heard you wrote something really bad about me. It's like, did you read it? No. And I can't imagine if you're Jerry West. I just can't. And you watch this show beginning to end, you're really upset about your portrayal. I just don't see it.
I think the acting and the casting's fantastic.
Especially Mark Landsberger. I just want to say Austin Aaron is Mark Landsberger.
He's right over there.
Yeah.
Were you? I found the casting fantastic. Is there anything about it that bothered you? Having written the book, was there any embellishment you thought, like the Jeannie Buss situation? They had some liberties there. Does that bother you at all?
All right, so it's interesting. When I first started watching the show, like, all right, there's a movie, We Are Marshall. Did you ever see We Are Marshall?
No, but I heard it's great.
I hate it. I hate everything about We Are Marshall. It's one of maybe my least favorite movie of all time because there's so much BS in that movie. And I was always like, this was a plane crash involving a team, and I hate this. So I kind of came into this with that way of thinking. Like every sport, my wife is always like, we can't watch sports movies because you ruin all of them. I'll be watching Rudy. I'll be like, they didn't throw the jerseys. I'll be watching.
I'm the same way.
Are you the same way? Remember
every time I see an actor trying to hit a baseball, I'm like, that's not a baseball player.
Exactly. Remember the Titans. None of this is, I'm that guy. So I had to let it go. Like I just had to let it go. I had to train my way to watch a show and see it as a celebration of the 1980s and the Lakers and these characters. So like people talked, for example, the first episode, people talked about the white party in the game when Norm Nixon and Magic Johnson play this basketball game, one-on-one game. That didn't happen in real life.
That's right. I read that didn't happen.
Did not happen. At first, I was a little, and I just, honest to God, came to accept the fact that, like, this is a celebration, that there's not a, based on a true story, sports movie or TV show out there that is soup to nuts strict to the material.
That's right.
And I just needed to accept it.
Was there a moment that you actually thought, I like that better than the part in my book?
Oh.
Like, they took that. They made that more colorful than I did.
There's a scene, it might be my favorite scene in the whole show. It's a press conference with Larry Bird, played by Sean Patrick Small, and Quincy Isaiah playing Magic.
Oh, and Larry Bird comes off as, like, hostile.
And he's spitting tobacco into a Budweiser can. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And that's the thing. It represents an attitude, a time period. Did it literally happen that way? Did the two literally sit there at the podium together at that moment? Probably not. But it represents something. And that's what that show is. And I've kind of allowed that.
You know, I said this the other day to you. I said, if you put Magic in Boston and Bird in LA, it would have worked. But this may have been just symbolically the perfect, in the end, the reason it worked was not just because they were great. They fit their city perfectly.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
100 million, trillion percent.
It's unbelievable what they did. Like, Joe Montana should have been with Bill Walsh. He was cool. San Francisco was the counter culture. Like, Montana just felt like San Francisco. I always think Aaron Rodgers feels like a Rams quarterback, not a Packer quarterback.
Yeah. Lawrence Taylor was a New York football player. Lawrence Taylor belonged. Mike Singletary was perfect as a Chicago Bear. They're just certain guys where you're like, that works.
When you go back to this book, it's called Three Rings, and it is, this book is based on, he's written two books. I want to give both credit. Showtime, Magic-Kareem Riley, the Laker Dynasty, this show. And then there's Three Rings. That's the Shaq Kobe stuff, which, by the way, are they going to do shows? Are they going to use both your books?
So they optioned the second book with the possibility.
Explain what that means to people.
So they bought the rights. So I got a check for the second book, basically.
So they're going to use that as another series.
It's theoretically possible. They basically retain the rights to use it, so I can't sell that elsewhere or something like that. So let's say this series goes great and it goes 5-6 seasons, then maybe they jump to the Shaq Kobe era. Okay,
so let me ask you, as a writer, which era is more interesting to you?
Oh, okay. I am a child of the 80s. So to me, growing up in my little hometown of Mahopac, New York, watching the Showtime Lakers was breathtaking. That said, the Shaq-Kobe relationship is much more interesting than the Magic-Kareem relationship if you're just talking superstars.
So, folks, when you read this book, were you shocked when you wrote Three Rings? Was there a moment when you're like, how did it work?
Yeah. I mean, when Kobe shows up for his first time, and they're at training camp, and they go around and introduce themselves. Kobe's 18 years old, and it's like, hey, I'm Shaq, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'm Eddie Jones from Temple. Hey, Nick Van Exel. Yo, I'm Kobe. Lower Merion. No one here is going to punk me. He's 18 years old. He's 18 years old in his first NBA training camp saying, nobody here is going to punk me.
People forget that Eddie Jones ended up being a really good player.
So Nick Van Exel.
Excellent player. Yeah. But they couldn't, like, Eddie Jones was seen as Kobe light a little bit, and Kobe was. That
was a horrible trade, by the way, when they traded Eddie Jones for Glenn Rice. Eddie Jones was far superior.
He went to Charlotte
and was Glenn Rice.
He was an all-star, I believe.
He was.
So here you are with winning time. Minute left. It must be incredibly satisfying that at this point in your career, books are now, because I don't think this is the last book that will become, I think the Favre book, I think that could eventually, how Aaron's career and Favre, that's something out there. Are you surprised, 40 seconds left, that one of your books hasn't been picked up yet, that you do think would make a great show?
I guess Sweetness about Walter Payton. I find his life very cinematic, the high and the low, and starting out impoverished in Columbia, Mississippi, and winding up, obviously, with this very tragic but kind of heroic death.
Right.
I think there's a real narrative flair to his life. So.
Okay, Hollywood, you heard Jeff Pearlman, that book. And I've said,
sign me up.
Payton's the best running back I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I didn't see Jim Brown. Walter Payton's the best running back I've ever seen. Jeff Pearlman, 6 New York Times bestsellers, 2 great Laker books. Three Ring Circus is the last book I just finished off. And congrats on all your success.
Thank you.
Well earned. And Hour 3 next. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.